On March 5th, 2022, cameras descended through 3 kilometers of Antarctic darkness and revealed something impossible. The wooden ship on the monitors looked like she had sunk yesterday. Her name gleamed in golden letters across the stern. Her wheel stood upright on deck. Glass portholes reflected the lights, and when the autonomous vehicle swept across the bow, there it was, perfectly preserved after 107 years on the ocean floor. The Endurance, the ship that carried 28 men into the worst survival ordeal in exploration history. The ship that was crushed by pack ice and swallowed by the Weddell Sea in 1915. The ship that every expert said would be destroyed by pressure, by cold, by a century of darkness. But what the cameras found defied everything we thought we knew about shipwrecks. This is the story of how Shackleton's Endurance became a frozen time capsule, how 28 men survived 500 days without land, and how the greatest miracle in polar exploration finally revealed itself from the abyss. December 5th, 1914, South Georgia Island. The Endurance slipped her moorings and headed south into the Scotia Sea. She was a barquentine, 144 feet long, built in Norway from solid oak with a hull reinforced to 26 inches thick. The bow measured 52 inches of dense wood designed to ram through pack ice. She had been constructed for a Belgian explorer's Arctic tourism venture, but Ernest Shackleton purchased her for £14,000 and renamed her after his family motto, "By endurance we conquer." And she would need every inch of that strength for what was coming. Shackleton's plan was audacious: cross Antarctica on foot, 1,800 miles from the Weddell Sea to the Ross Sea via the South Pole. It was the last great prize in polar exploration, the only Antarctic challenge that remained unconquered. Shackleton was 40 years old, an Anglo-Irish explorer who had come within 97 miles of the South Pole in 1909, closer than any human before Amundsen reached it in 1911. Now both poles were claimed. Only the crossing remained. 28 men sailed with him, Captain Frank Worsley, a 42-year-old New Zealander whose navigation skills bordered on supernatural. Frank Wild, Shackleton's second-in-command, fiercely loyal, a veteran of that 1909 near miss. Tom Crean, a 37-year-old Irish seaman who had already earned the Albert Medal for saving a dying crewmate with a solo 35-mile Antarctic march. Frank Hurley, the 29-year-old Australian photographer who brought tons of camera equipment to document the crossing. And Harry McNish, the 40-year-old Scottish carpenter whose skills would later save every life, along with his beloved cat Mrs. Chippy, who became the crew's favourite companion. The youngest was Perce Blackborough, a 19-year-old Welsh sailor discovered as a stowaway 3 days out. Shackleton reportedly told him, "Do you know that on these expeditions we often get very hungry, and if there is a stowaway available, he is the first to be eaten." Blackborough survived. He would need more than luck. By December 7th, they encountered pack ice, unusually severe that year. Norwegian whalers had warned Shackleton, but he pressed on. On January 18, 1915, just one day from their landing site at Vassal Bay, the ice closed around them like a fist. The Endurance was beset, trapped, and the Antarctic winter was coming. At first, Shackleton hoped they might break free. The ship became a winter station with watches cancelled and men playing football on the frozen sea. But by February, Shackleton knew the truth. They would drift with the ice for months, carried wherever the pack decided. The transcontinental crossing was over before it began. The ice drifted northwest, carrying the ship nearly 1,200 miles. Then in September, a southwest gale with 70-mile-per-hour winds broke the pack into aggressive flows. On September 30th, the ice attacked. Pressure waves hit with such violence the ship literally jumped into the air. Frames bent inward, bulkheads buckled. Men heard sounds like artillery fire as timbers cracked under pressure that would have crushed steel. Shackleton wrote that the noise resembled the roar of heavy, distant surf, as if a mighty giant was breathing and tossing beneath them. When the hull finally gave way, the sounds were like fireworks and guns blasting in sequence. The Endurance was dying, and 28 men were about to be stranded on drifting ice in the most hostile ocean on Earth. If you are still here, you now understand that this was not just an expedition. This was a death sentence that somehow 28 men survived. What happened after the ship sank would become the greatest survival story ever told, and when researchers found the wreck in 2022, the evidence on the ocean floor would reveal exactly how violent her final moments were. Comment the number 2 if you are following this story. If you have not subscribed, please do so and turn on notifications. Now let us see how 28 men defied impossible odds and what the wreck finally revealed about their ordeal. At 5 p.m. on October 27th, 1915, with temperatures at -26 degrees Celsius, Shackleton gave the order: abandon ship. The crew was allowed just £2 each of personal gear, though Shackleton exempted one item, Leonard Hussey's banjo. He knew music would keep them sane. They lowered lifeboats, provisions and sledges onto the ice and established Ocean Camp 1.5 miles from the dying ship. But the Endurance refused to sink quickly. For weeks she remained afloat, allowing salvage. Photographer Frank Hurley stripped naked and dove into 3 feet of icy water inside the flooding ship to retrieve his photographic plates. When he surfaced, Shackleton forced him to choose. From over 600 glass negatives, Hurley selected 120. Then together, they smashed the remaining 400 on the ice. For the rest of the expedition, Hurley had only a pocket camera and 3 rolls of film. On November 21st, 1915, at 5 p.m, a final pressure wave struck. Shackleton's voice echoed across the ice. "She's going, boys!" The ship convulsed, gave one quick dive, and the ice closed over her forever. The crew hoisted the blue ensign so she would go down with colours flying. The Endurance was gone, swallowed by the Weddell Sea. 28 men were alone on the ice. What followed was 497 days without land. They lived on ice floes, eating seals and penguins. When food ran low, Shackleton ordered all 69 sled dogs shot. Carpenter McNish never forgave him for killing Mrs. Chippy. By April 1916, they reached Elephant Island. On April 9th, 3 lifeboats launched into the Southern Ocean. 7 days of hell followed. Freezing temperatures, frostbite, dysentery. Frank Weil later wrote that half the party were insane by landing. On April 15th, 1916, all 28 men touched land for the first time in 497 days. But Elephant Island offered no rescue. Shackleton's solution was insane. Sail 800 miles in a 22-foot lifeboat to South Georgia. McNish modified the James Caird, strengthening her hull and building a deck shelter. On April 24th, Shackleton departed with 5 men. Frank Worsley faced an impossible task: navigate to a target 25 miles wide across 800 miles of the stormiest ocean on Earth using only a sextant and chronometer. If he missed South Georgia, The next land was Africa, 3,000 miles away. To take sun sightings, he had to kneel on the boat's thwart while two men held him upright, and Shackleton stood below with the chronometer. Over 16 days, he managed only 4 accurate sun fixes. The rest was, in his words, a merry jest of guesswork. The conditions were nightmarish. Winds hit force 9. Waves towered 60 feet from trough to crest. Ice accumulated 15 inches thick on the boat, threatening to capsize her. Men crawled onto the pitching deck in darkness to chip it away with an axe. Seawater contaminated their drinking supply, and Tom Crean, acting as cook, somehow kept them fed while singing throughout the voyage. Shackleton wrote that they felt the boat lifted and flung forward like a cork in breaking surf. On May 5th, he saw what appeared to be a rift in the clouds, but was actually the white crest of an enormous wave, the largest they had encountered. On May 10th, 1916, after 16 days at sea, they landed at King Haakon Bay on South Georgia's southern coast. They had survived the ocean, but the whaling stations were on the north coast, across an uncharted mountain range that whalers considered completely inaccessible. No one had ever crossed South Georgia's interior. No map existed. Shackleton, Worsley and Crean set out on May 18th with a carpenter's adze for an ice axe, 50 feet of rope, and boot screws as makeshift crampons. For 36 continuous hours, they marched across glaciers and 5,000-foot peaks in darkness. At one point, facing an impassable cliff, they coiled their rope, sat on it like a toboggan, and slid down a steep icy slope blind. It was an enormous gamble. It worked. At 5 a.m., utterly exhausted, Worsley and Crean collapsed. Shackleton knew if he slept too, they would all freeze to death. He waited 5 minutes, then woke them, claiming they had slept half an hour. He forced them onward. All 3 men later independently described sensing a fourth presence with them, as if something supernatural was guiding their steps through the darkness. At 6:30 a.m. on May 20th, Shackleton thought he heard a steam whistle from Stromness whaling station. At 7 o'clock he heard it again. They staggered into the station, their faces blackened with soot, hair matted, clothes in rags. The station manager, who had entertained them 18 months earlier, did not recognize them. "Who the hell are you?" he asked. Shackleton replied, "My name is Shackleton." 4 attempts were needed to reach the 22 men on Elephant Island. Ice turned back 3 ships. Finally, on August 30th, 1916, the Chilean tug Yelcho broke through. Frank Wild had maintained morale for 127 days by rolling up his sleeping bag every morning and announcing, "Get your things ready, boys. The boss may come today." All 22 men were evacuated within 1 hour. Not a single life had been lost. Shackleton later wrote to his wife, "I have done it. Not a life lost, and we have been through hell." And then the Endurance was forgotten. For 107 years, she remained lost beneath the ice. The Weddell Sea's perpetual pack made her the most unreachable shipwreck on Earth. Previous expeditions had failed. A 2019 attempt lost a $6 million underwater vehicle when electronics imploded at depth. But in 2022, conditions aligned. Antarctic sea ice reached the lowest extent ever recorded since satellite monitoring began. Just 1.92 million square kilometers. The thin ice allowed the research vessel Agulhas II to reach the search area. The Endurance 22 expedition deployed a hybrid autonomous underwater vehicle nicknamed Ellie, capable of operating beneath shifting pack ice while maintaining a fibre optic connection to the ship above. The team had covered 81% of their search area when, on March 5th, 2022, at 4:05 p.m, pilot Robbie McGonigal spotted something on sonar. A very large object. The subsea manager demanded proof. "I want to see wood," he said. "Until we see wood, we have clues but no proof." For 30 seconds, he heard only computers and his own heartbeat. Then the camera feed activated. Out of the abyssal darkness, the port side of the Endurance filled the screen. Black and white paint gleaming as if applied yesterday. The name Endurance arcing across the stern in golden letters with the 5-pointed Polaris star below. The ship's wheels standing upright on deck, glass portholes intact, and most remarkably, Frank Hurley's flare gun lying exactly where he had placed it 107 years earlier after firing it in tribute as the ship sank. The wreck sits upright at 3,008 meters depth, just 5.4 nautical miles from the position Captain Worsley recorded in 1915. The preservation is beyond belief. Marine archaeologist Menson Bound, who has seen hundreds of shipwrecks, called it by far the finest wooden wreck he had ever encountered. The wood is pristine because, at that depth, water temperature hovers just below freezing, and 300 atmospheres of pressure create an environment where nothing can survive to eat the timber. The shipworms that devour wooden wrecks in warmer oceans cannot reach Antarctica. Scientists estimate the Endurance could survive for centuries exactly as she is now. The discovery brought closure to what Thomas Henry called the most treacherous region on Earth. The wreck is now protected under the Antarctic Treaty. No artifacts will ever be removed. The expedition documented the site with over 25,000 high-resolution images, creating millimetre-accurate models. The 3 holes McNish and Hurley cut in the deck to salvage supplies remain visible. Physical evidence of their desperate final hours aboard. Ernest Shackleton died of a heart attack on January 5th, 1922 at age 47 aboard the Quest while moored at South Georgia. His wife requested he be buried there rather than England. His grave faces south toward Antarctica with an epitaph from Robert Browning. "I hold that a man should strive to the utmost for his life's set prize." The Endurance was discovered exactly 100 years to the day after that burial. Frank Wild's ashes were placed beside Shackleton in 2011. Tom Crean returned to Ireland, opened the South Pole Inn, and never spoke publicly of his exploits, dying in 1938. Harry McNish, denied the Polar Medal despite saving everyone's lives, died destitute in 1930. A bronze statue of Mrs. Chippy was placed on his grave in 2004. Frank Worsley published books about the expedition before dying in 1943 with full naval honours, and Frank Hurley's glass plate negatives, the ones he risked his life to save, remain in perfect condition at the Royal Geographical Society. The Endurance never crossed Antarctica, but she achieved something greater. She proved that leadership, courage, and refusal to abandon hope can triumph over the most hostile environment on Earth. All 28 men survived. And now, 3 kilometers beneath the frozen Weddell Sea, the ship that carried them waits in eternal darkness, still bearing the name that became her prophecy. By endurance we conquer.